Hello everyone, and welcome back to The Lost Planeswalker. You're here with me, Jesse, the Lost Planeswalker, and today is day 2 of spoilers for the Fallout Commander decks, pre-con reveal, whatever. We got a lot of brand new cards today, we got a lot of reprint cards today, and we got a lot of cool lands, and that's the order I'm going to do this in. For all of you who only care about what's new, I'm just going to talk about those first. Anybody interested in reprints can see that, and then I'm just going to throw in the lands there at the end very quickly. But let's dive right in, let's not waste any more time. The first set of new cards we got here is Acquired Mutation, Agility Bobblehead, and Armory Paladin. So Acquired Mutation is 2 in a red enchantment aura enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and is goaded. Whenever enchanted player attacks, defending player gets 2 rad counters. So while you have to attack with this creature that you are attacking, you also get the benefit of putting 2 rad counters on an opponent. Now, also, if you put this on an opponent's creature, they can't attack you because it's goaded, and then another one of your opponents will also get rad counters. So I don't really know how this particularly works well in red yet. Maybe we're going to get some more red cards that care about these rad counters, but it's a cool way to give a new aura enchantment. Agility Bobblehead is next. Like all the bobbleheads, you tap it to add 1 mana of any color, then 3 tap up to X target creatures you control gain haste until end of turn and can't be blocked this turn except by creatures with haste, where X is the number of bobbleheads you control as you activate this ability. This just gives X target creatures unblockable and haste, which is pretty good, especially because, you know, if you have the extra mana and you just played a bunch of big creatures, this would be a cool way to be able to attack with them and make it so they can't be blocked. And Armory Paladin is 1 red-white creature human knight with trample. Whenever you cast an aura or equipment spell, exile the top card of your library. You may play the card until the end of your next turn. Seems pretty good for the dog meat deck, so I'm glad to see this card. Next up, we have Bighorn Rancher, Breakdown, and Camp. So Bighorn Rancher is a human ranger with vigilance. Tap it to add amount of green equal to the greatest power among creatures you control, and sacrifice Bighorn Rancher. You gain life equal to the greatest toughness among creatures you control. I think that first tap ability is going to be way more important. Obviously, if it's tapped out and somebody plays a board wipe, of course, you can sack it to gain a bunch of life at that point. You can generate a ton of green mana. Now, this does cost 5, so it's not a mana dork you're going to get out quickly. And, of course, it only gets better with the more power you have on the board. So this is going to be interesting, to say the least. Breakdown is an instant that says destroy target artifact or enchantment, and then create a junk token. Honestly, not too terrible. Gets a junk token that basically replaces this card, so that's kind of cool effect. It is a little expensive, but that's okay. And Camp, which has a fortification, which fortification is a very old Magic mechanic that I don't believe we've seen in probably 20 plus years, but Fortify works exactly like Equip, but it works for lands. So, whenever fortified land is tapped for mana, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. If that creature shares a color with the mana that land produced, create a junk token. Fortify for 3, pay 3, attach to target land you control. Fortify only as a sorcery. This is a really cool effect. I'm glad to see them bring back, and it really is going to make this card kind of unique. I don't know if 3 mana to cast, 3 mana to fortify, and then tapping a land for mana is really going to be that good. 6 mana to put a +1/+1 counter on a target creature and potentially make a junk. Maybe that's good. In certain decks, obviously, that care about making artifacts, that should be good. If you have an overwhelming amount of mana, obviously that's, can be helpful. So this is a really interesting card, and I'm interested to see how people are going to use this. Next up, we have Cass Hand of Vengeance, Charisma Bobblehead, and Craig Booney, Novik Guard. So Cass Hand of Vengeance is a legendary creature human ranger with vigilance. Whenever Cass or another creature you control dies, if it was enchanted or equipped, return any number of aura cards that were attached to it from your graveyard to the battlefield attached to target creature. Then attach any number of equipment that was attached to it to that creature. This is a really, really great card. The hardest part about, Voltron Boros style decks is that it's very easy to kill a creature and then all of that equipment just falls off. But Cass just makes it so any aura enchantments or equipment just auto-attach to another creature, which is an awesome effect and is probably going to have to be removed before they remove your creature. So if they're just using single target removal, they're going to have to use even more resources to do so. Charisma Bobblehead is 3 generic mana, tap to add 1 mana of any color, and 4 tap, create X 1/1 white soldier creature tokens, where X is the number of bobbleheads you control, activate only as a sorcery. I thought this effect was pretty good. For 4 mana, I'm not as convinced. I think there's going to be 7 bobbleheads in total, and I think we might have gotten all the bobbleheads today, potentially. So I don't think 4 mana to make 7 creatures potentially is that good. There's a lot of other effects that do it better, and this also requires you to get and cast all those bobbleheads, so you're putting at least 21 mana into just casting them all, and then another 4 mana. So for 25 mana, you're making 7 creatures. I don't think this scales very well. Maybe this is worth playing if you're playing, creature and token doublers or, effects when creatures enter the battlefield. But right now, I don't think this bobblehead is as good as the other ones. And Craig Boone, Novik Guard, is a legendary creature, human soldier, reach, and lifelink. 1 for my baby. Whenever you attack with 2 or more creatures, put 2 quest counters on Craig Boone, Novik Guard. When you do, Craig Boone deals damage equal to the number of quest counters on it to up to 1 target creature, unless that creature's controller has Craig Boone deal that damage to them. So you can basically put a ton of quest counters on Craig, have him deal a ton of damage to a creature, or an opponent just has to take the brunt of that damage, basically giving you a versatile removal spell whenever you attack with 2 or more creatures. Pretty interesting effect. It doesn't necessarily have to be Craig that you attack with here too. It says whenever you attack with 2 or more creatures. So you can kind of build up those counters just by attacking with tokens, and then just remove essential pieces off your opponent's boards unless they take that damage instead, which after a few rounds of combat is going to start adding up. Next up, we have Crimson Caravaner, Duchess Wayward Tavern Keeper, and Ed E. Lonesome Eyebot. Crimson Caravaner is a creature human scout with double strike and trample. Whenever Crimson Caravaner deals combat damage to a player, create a junk token. So the best part about this card here is that double strike is going to make it so you make 2 junk tokens if you connect. So I actually find this card pretty good. I love small double strike creatures because you have huge potential with them, and this one already has trample on it, so just equipping one big aura enchantment, maybe one that has flash, is all it's going to take for you to deal some serious damage and make some junk tokens. Duchess Wayward Tavern Keeper is a legendary creature human citizen with Hunters for Hire. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put a quest counter on it. 1, remove a quest counter from a permanent you control and create a junk counter. So this is a really cool way to create a ton of junk tokens. So maybe if you're building a deck strategizing around junk tokens, this would be a great card to add into it. Maybe not the commander, maybe the commander. There are a lot of other red effects that make junk tokens as well, so this could be a very viable route. But just it says whenever a creature you control, not just one creature. So I think that this is an awesome effect. And Eddie Lonesome Eyebot is a legendary artifact creature robot with flying. Eddie, my love, whenever you attack, if the number of attacking creatures is greater than the number of quest counters on Eddie, Lonesome Eyebot, put a quest counter on it. 2, sacrifice Eddie, draw a card, then draw an additional card for each quest counter on Eddie. Now, I've seen kind of a theme. We've seen some other robots so far in this set, and a lot of them care about drawing cards or putting quest counters on them, and then when they die or something, you draw a lot of cards. So this is a cool effect that is in, every color because they are colorless creatures. So this is an awesome effect, and, I could see this being put in some decks because Eddie doesn't necessarily have to attack to get those counters put on him, and then you can just sack it to draw a bunch. So maybe in colors that struggle with drawing, this would be a good way to do so. Our next 3 cards are Elder Arthur Maxon, Endurance Bobblehead, and Grim Reaper's Sprint. So Elder Arthur Maxon is 1 white-black legendary creature human knight. Creature tokens you control have training, and training says whenever a creature token you control attacks with another creature with greater power, put a +1/+1 counter on that token. Blind Betrayal says sack another creature. Elder Arthur Maxon gains indestructible until end of turn. If you're playing a deck that is generating maybe spirits or, human soldier creature tokens that are in these colors, you're going to get to just be able to train them all up and at least train them to Elder Arthur Maxon's power. And if you have to sack one every turn to just train the rest of them up, that seems like a pretty good deal to me. Creating a board of, 4/2s can really easily outpace your opponents if they grow every turn without you really having to do anything. Endurance Bobblehead is 3 generic mana, tap to add 1 mana of any color. 3, tap, up to X target creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain indestructible until end of turn, where X is the number of bobbleheads you control as you activate this ability. Activate only as a sorcery. This one's a little bit middle of the road for me. You can give a creature indestructible for 3 and pump it a little bit, so I actually like that effect a little bit, but I don't really want to be paying 3 to do this just to one creature every turn, unless maybe you need to. So I feel like there's specific decks where this would be really good, but this isn't a card I'm going to be putting in decks just willy-nilly. And Grim Reaper Sprint is an enchantment aura with Morbid. This is a cool mechanic that says this spell costs 3 less to cast if a creature died this turn. Enchant creature. When Grim Reaper's Sprint enters the battlefield, untap each creature you control. If it's your main phase, there's an additional combat phase after this phase. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 in haste. So what I like about this card is that potentially for just 2 red mana, you get an additional combat, which could be the difference between you winning and losing a game, at the end of a game. So I think this is a really cool effect. And honestly, for 5 mana, just to get an extra combat might not be too bad either. So next up, we have Inventory Management, Kellogg Dangerous Mind, and Lucky Bobblehead. Inventory Management is a very cool card because it has one of my favorite keywords ever printed, which is Split Second. So for just red and a white instant, Split Second, as long as this spell is on the stack, players can't cast spells or activate abilities that aren't mana abilities. For each aura or equipment you control, you may attach it to a creature you control. So Split Second is one of my favorite abilities because it means there is 0 interaction. You can't counter it, you can't cast anything before or after it. Once you cast this spell, everything that's on the stack resolves, or if this is the only spell that's being cast, nothing else can be cast against it. Split Second is such an incredibly strong mechanic. They print it very, very cautiously, but in this set, we've seen Split Second a couple of times already, like in VATS, so this is a very, very cool effect. In addition, for just red and a white, for each aura or equipment you control, you may attach it to a creature. So you can basically re-equip all of your equipment however you want with this card, if I'm reading it right. And that seems incredibly powerful, especially if you're going in for an attack. Nobody can resolve anything else, and then you just attack after that and just kill them. So very, very cool effect. Kellogg Dangerous Mind is 1 black-red legendary creature human mercenary with first strike and haste. Whenever Kellogg Dangerous Mind attacks, create a treasure token. Sacrifice 5 treasures, gain control of target creature for as long as you control Kellogg. Activate only as a sorcery. This doesn't make Kellogg tap. You can just generate treasures like crazy. Stealing all of your opponent's stuff is incredibly easy. I think that this would be an awesome, awesome card. I just worry that if you have no protection around keeping Kellogg on the board, he's just going to get wiped, and you're just going to have to basically do it all over again. And 5 treasures for each creature is not a insignificant amount of treasure. You're going to be wanting to steal your opponent's good stuff, and if you spend 30 treasures to take 6 creatures and then he gets killed, that's a huge loss. That is 30 treasures you could have spent doing other things. So I think this card comes with some really big benefits, but some also really big drawbacks if you're not careful. And Lucky Bobblehead. This is my favorite bobblehead out of the bunch. So for a single mana, tap to roll X 6-sided dice, where X is the number of bobbleheads you control. Create a tapped treasure token for each even result. If you rolled 6 exactly, 7 times, you win the game. So basically, I believe there's going to be 7 bobbleheads, 1 for each special letter. And if you roll all of those exactly 6, you can win the game. It's not probable that's going to happen, but it's not unlikely either. There's a lot of effects that say, well, if you would roll a die, roll it again and take the higher result. So this could potentially help out with that. In addition, you are going to have all 7 bobbleheads on the battlefield, so I don't know how good that's going to be. But just a quick reminder that if you saw my video and saw me talking about Mr. House, he cares about rolling dice. So this is a really cool card to put in that deck, because just for 1 bobblehead, if that's all you have and you're just rolling 1 die, that seems good enough for me, and you have the potential to generate a treasure off of that, basically making the roll free. So afterwards, we have Megaton's Fate, Mr. Gutsy, and Moira Brown Guide Author. Megaton's Fate is a sorcery with choose 1, disarm, destroy target artifact, create 4 treasure tokens, or detonate. Megaton's Fate deals 8 damage to each creature. Each player gets 4 rad counters. This is a pretty good board wipe, actually. Dealing damage like this, there's a lot of ways to prevent it, but I think for 6 mana, that's not too bad. In addition, you're giving people rad counters, meaning that that's a potential way to kill them if their health is really low. And disarm is actually a cool function of this card because potentially you destroy an artifact and create 4 treasures. Well, red and blue love discounting sorceries and instants, so you could be casting this for less than the cost and then be getting 4 treasures out of it, making you actually gain mana from casting this, or potentially cut or break even on this cast. So I think that that's a really cool effect, and this is probably going to be a card that Storm players might consider if they already have those discount effects in their deck. Mr. Gutsy is an artifact creature robot soldier with whenever you cast an aura or equipment spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Mr. Gutsy. When Mr. Gutsy dies, create X junk tokens where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on it. Pretty cool effect. I think that this is a great robot. I think you have to be playing aura or equipment to really get anything out of it, but creating a bunch of junk tokens could be pretty good, especially in those colors. Get more stuff off the top that you can play. And Moira Brown, Guide Author, is a legendary creature human citizen with, when Moira Brown, Guide Author enters the battlefield, create a colorless equipment artifact token named Wasteland Survival Guide. With an equipped creature, gets +1/+1 for each quest counter among permanents you control, and equip for 1. Whenever you attack, put a quest counter on target non-land permanent you control. So a really interesting way, I think, if you're going to build around this card, because she provides you with a pretty strong equipment, is basically bouncing her over and over again to put as many of those wasteland guides on the battlefield as possible. There is a lot of cards that puts quest counters out there, and I can see this being incredibly strong. If you have 4 permanents with, 2 counters each, that's 8 +1/+1s that some creature is getting for only 1 equip cost. This is pretty strong, and I don't know how this is going to work. I bet this is more or less going to be a support card, but it's a very cool card nonetheless. So next up, we have Mysterious Stranger, Paladin, Elizabeth Tragedy, and Pre-War Formal Wear. So Mysterious Stranger is 2 red creature human rogue with flash. When Mysterious Stranger enters the battlefield, for each graveyard with an instant or sorcery card in it, exile target instant or sorcery card from that graveyard. If 2 or more cards are exiled this way, choose one of them at random and copy it. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. So this is kind of a roulette style card, right? You might put something really good in your graveyard, and maybe one of your opponents has one other thing in theirs. Well, you got a 50-50 shot when you play this to be able to cast a copy of one of them for free. Kind of later in the game, it's kind of more of a roulette, because there might be 10 different instant sorcery cards in all the graveyards, and you kind of get to choose one of those from each graveyard, and kind of, your chances go down as there's more instant sorceries in the graveyard of what you're going to get. But this is a cool effect, and I'm sure there's some red deck that cares about you casting just random stuff for value. Paladin Elizabeth Tragedy is a creature human knight with Battalion. Whenever Elizabeth and at least 2 other creatures attack, draw a card. Then you may put a creature card with mana value X or less from your hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking, where X is Elizabeth's power. This is a unique effect that we don't get a lot of in red. I know that Ilhar the Razor Boar also has this same effect, similar effect, where you can just put something from your hand tapped and attacking on the battlefield. And this gets around a lot of costs. There's a lot of easy ways you could power this up and just drop huge things on the battlefield that maybe they have flying, maybe it's a dragon, who knows what, for just massive damage and effects. So this is a really cool card where that you can cheat a lot of stuff into play with. And lastly, we have Pre-War Formal Wear artifact equipment. When Pre-War Formal Wear enters the battlefield, return target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield and attach Pre-War Formal Wear to it. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has Vigilance. I love this card. It's an equipment, it buffs up a creature, you get something back from your graveyard. This is a really cool effect in white, and I would love to see more of these. Next up, we have Strength Bobblehead, Strong Back, and Super Mutant Scavenger. So Strength Bobblehead, like all of them, taps to add 1 mana of any color, or 3 tap, put X +1/+1 counters on target creature, where X is the number of bobbleheads you control, activate only as a sorcery. This is kind of the more generic one out of all of them. I think all of them kind of have a little twist that we're not used to seeing, but putting X +1/+1 counters is kind of normal. And for 3 mana, it's okay. Strong Back, probably my favorite aura enchantment card I've seen so far to come out of this set. Enchant creature. Equip abilities you activate that target enchanted creature costs 3 less to activate. Aura spells you cast that target enchanted creature costs 3 less to cast. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 for each aura and equipment attached to it. I don't think I need to say anything. This is a good card. I just worry that this is going to get removed because people are going to see how strong it is. So maybe you play it to, make people worry. This is a great effect. It's a great card. For 3 mana, I think it's very, very easily costed, because almost right away you could cast a thing and save basic. You're just going to save so much mana from casting this. This is a good card. I don't need to say anything else. And Super Mutant Scavenger is a mutant warrior with trample. When Super Mutant Scavenger enters a battlefield or dies, return up to one target aura or equipment card from your graveyard to your hand. Pretty decent effect. 5 mana, you get something when it enters and dies. I think that's a pretty good effect. The fact that it has trample as well is good because you're going to want to equip this. And then when they kill it, you get to get stuff back too. Next up, we have Vault 21, House Gambit, Vault 75, Middle School, and Well Rested. Vault 21, House Gambit is a saga that says phase 1 and 2, discard a card, then draw a card. Then phase 3, reveal up to 5 non-land cards from your hand. For each of those cards that has the same mana value as another card revealed this way, create a treasure token. They're referring to 5-card poker here, so this is kind of a cool, fun twist on it. But yeah, that's fun. Vault 75 Middle School says Saga Point 1, exile all creatures with power 4 or greater. Then Saga Point 2 and 3, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. I don't quite understand what's going on here. I never got to Vault 75 in the games I played, but I'm a little scared. It seems a little terrifying that Bear is kind of torn up in a way. I don't know what's going on there, but yeah, this seems like a pretty good card. Being able to buff all your stuff up, you know, especially cards or creatures or strategies that care about putting +1/+1 counters on creatures. This seems pretty good. Pair this with any sort of effect that doubles those counters, triples those counters. You're just in for a good time. And lastly here we have Well Rested. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature has, whenever this creature becomes untapped, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. Then you gain 2 life and draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. Cool. You're going to put this on something you want to attack with, and then it just gets bigger. You gain some life and draw a card after it untaps. So for 2 mana, I think this is a great card. I'd put this in a lot of decks. So that gets through all of the new cards that came out. I'm very quickly going to run through all of the reprints and lands that we also received in case anybody is interested in those as well. So very quickly, I'm not going to really talk about them. Just going to read the names and show the cards on the screen. So starting out, we have Abundant Growth, All That Glitters, Anguished Unmaking, Basilisk Collar, Behemoth Sledge, Blasphemous Act, Bloodforged Battle Axe, Brass Knuckles, Champion's Helm, Chaos Warp, Explorer Scope, Fertile Ground, Fire Shrieker, General's Enforcer, Heroic Reinforcements, Hour of Reckoning, Mantle of the Ancients, Marshal's Anthem, Masterwork of Ingenuity, Path to Exile, Rancor, Single Combat, Skull Clamp, Squirrel Nest, Sticky Fingers, Swiftfoot Boots, Valorous Stance, Vandal Blast, Fog Crawler, who is just a cover of Vigor, which I think is very cool, Wear and Tear, and Wild Growth. A lot of cool reprints, especially Vigor. That is a card I don't think we've got reprinted in a while. It's a very powerful one. The Vandal Blast reprint is pretty sick as well. So there's a lot of good stuff that we got reprinted today. And in the same fashion, I'm just going to run through the lands very quickly. I did see that there is the Signet cycle of lands that did get the final, 5 or so cards printed with them that have been, unprinted for the last 23 years. I don't know which ones are new and didn't look it up, so I'm just going to read through the cards, and maybe if we got one of the new ones, there you go. So, starting out with the lands, we have Buried Ruin, Canopy Vista, Cinderglade, Clifftop Retreat, Exotic Orchard, Jungle Shrine, Junktown, Mossfire Valley, Roadside Reliquary, Rogue's Passage, Rootbound Crag, Scattered Groves, Scavenger Grounds, Sheltered Thicket, Sungrass Prairie, Sunpetal Grove, Temple of Abandon, Temple of Plenty, Temple of the False God, Temple of Triumph, and Veer to Second Bog. Probably said that one wrong. Maybe that's one of the new cards. But that is it. I just want to say thank you so much for watching. I hope this was set up a little better. I got some comments on my videos, and I just wanted to perform these a little better. If you were interested in only the new stuff, you got that and you could leave. But if you wanted to see everything, I still listed everything out for you. I appreciate it taking the time, watching these videos, supporting me. If you could help support me by sharing this with a friend, leaving a like, and subscribing to see more. I'm going to try and do this for all of the Fallout days, as long as we're getting spoilers, maybe not next week if it's just reprints. But I really appreciate all the attention that these videos have gotten. It has been just such an amazing thing for my account. I've gotten a ton of new subscribers, and a ton of interaction is just incredibly helpful. So thank you. In addition, if there's a card you saw today that you were so excited to see, or maybe there's a card you are still waiting to see, maybe there's a character or creature or who knows what, please leave that down in the comments down below. I would love to see what you guys are hoping to get or just so excited to get. And that just makes me so happy. So today's Scryfall card of the day is Pledge of Loyalty. Urza convinced many Dominarians not only to set aside their differences, but to embrace them. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you later, Planeswalkers.